Okay, so let's get into a few of these topics. I think we should start with BDS because this is kind of the older one. So this was actually an issue about 3 to 4 years ago, I would say, or maybe 5 years ago when BDS was at its peak at least, or in left circles and media, you would hear about it a lot. And surprisingly, I mean, a lot of people were surprised to this. Norman Finkelstein came out against BDS movement. I mean, he's called them everything from being a cult, so things like this. And then also on top of that, he says that they don't recognize the existence of Israel. And my understanding on this is, and he also says that they inflate the number of refugees. So if you look on the BDS website, they say there's 7 or so million Palestinian refugees. The UN says there are about 5 million something. There are even accounts that are a bit less. But pretty much, and they say that, they want all these people to be able to return to their homeland. So I think based on this, Norman Finkelstein says that, if you do that, then there will be no Israel. So that can't exist. That is my interpretation of why he says that. And on top of that, I've heard him also say that in general, he doesn't think that this will be an argument that will work with the mainstream public. So he doesn't think that it's a good strategy. But yeah, this is my understanding. Sam, what do you think about Finkelstein's take on the BDS movement and just about the BDS movement in general?
Yeah, I was surprised by his. I would have thought, yeah, naturally, because he's pro-Palestinian, this was a movement that he would support. But yeah, I was surprised when he came out against it. In a way, first of all, about BDS itself, I personally don't think it could be that successful. It's probably a good way of getting some extra publicity, but I don't think it would be successful. And I vehemently, I suppose, disagree with arguments that a boycott of products in South Africa or in India before that led to change of government and change of system of governance. I think there were other reasons for those changes. That's something hopefully we can do in one
But
of the
okay,
videos.
but in the South African
But
case
so
specifically,
yeah,
how much weight do you give to that? Because in the mainstream narrative, the boycott was a big factor.
uh, that's the thing. I am far more comfortable, to be honest, talking about the Indian case because I
Already,
know
okay.
more about the Indian case. But the South African one, uh, I, to be honest, South African one is a strange. I think South Africa is a strange case because it's a Commonwealth. It was a Commonwealth nation, and you know, times were changing, and it was still a country part of the part of the tradition, West kind of. So I think that was a special case in many ways. But I would say that the boycott of products at that time did play a role. Although, from what I do recall, for example, Britain never boycotted South African products and those things. But the Indian case that I know more about, for example, a lot of times in the popular culture and in the people's thinking, it is said that the boycott of products, British products, led by Mahatma Gandhi, was the key factor leading to the removal of the British forces in India. That's, in my view, that's not the case at all. The British Empire was already many people within the British Empire believed that it had grown too big for there was too much cost relative to the revenue it was bringing in, because it was so big that the cost of maintaining that empire was too high. This was already in the thinking, like about 100, like not 100, maybe 50 years before the empire ended and India was basically became independent. And then you had the European wars, and then all of that had added extra cost to the British thing, the British Empire. So I don't think boycott of products just played any significant role, or less than 10%. I would say I would give them weights. I don't think these type of thing generally have really any significance. And it's just that because it's nice because it's good. It's obviously who even I want to live in a world that, if the people, all of us come together and decide and boycott something, laws change. But that's usually not the case. So yeah, I just don't think it's a very effective. And I think Finkelstein does kind of agree with me on that. And I think he doesn't believe it's very, and I think he makes the point that he doesn't think the the societies in the West, or the population in the West, they are not very inclined to support such a movement. If I'm not mistaken, that's the argument
Yeah,
he makes.
that's one of the key arguments I've heard. When you read about it, you hear of the more controversial ones. He kind of makes, like, calling them a cult and everything. But that
Oh
is
yeah,
one of the main arguments that it made.
and
So, yeah,
just to add to that, I was gonna say that yeah, I agree with him there. That yeah, I don't think the population is also very inclined to right now to boycott Israeli products or any country's
yeah.
products.
So, okay, so we talked about its strategic significance right now, right? But let's just put that aside. And even for that, you can say that perhaps someone could say, and I mean, look, now it seems like the movement has kind of lost a bit of its momentum. So you see, it got the original coverage and everything, but it's not really leading to anything. Anybody could make that argument. It has been 5, 7 years or something that the movement exists, maybe longer. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about its legitimacy though. And I mean, it's going to be a bit subjective, the criteria I'm going to give. So do you think that it's legitimate to boycott, at the very least, products that come from places and that are illegal settlements? So under international law, they're recognized as illegal settlements. Do you think you can boycott those products and not be a hypocrite? So by that I mean that, if you're boycotting these products, can you say that this is the only case in the world where there is this issue, and therefore I don't have to boycott products from other places or other countries because this one's unique? Do you think that's the case?
Because to answer your original question, I think, to be honest, you cannot live in the modern world, use modern equipment without being a hypocrite. The question is how much of a hypocrite you really are. We use
Yeah, like, okay,
computers
yeah,
to cut
exactly.
short,
Like, for no, but
as
for
use.
instance, if you
Yeah, I know
boycott a
what you mean.
country for human right violations, you're really
I
pushing it unless you're boycotting pretty
I
much
think
90% of the countries.
I think if you can do it, if you have a certain level of income and you can like it's, and I think settlement products coming from settlement are not usually life-saving medicine or something, or that type of thing. So if you can do it, it's good to do, but know that you're largely doing it for yourself. You're not really helping the situation or anything. You're doing a good thing. I try not to loiter in the streets, right? I know I am happy that I do that because I like to think it makes me a better person or whatever. I'm okay, like I'm a good citizen, whatever. But I have no delusions about I'm saving the environment. It's as effective. Like it's not. It's yeah. In terms of
Yeah.
effects, it has as much effects as not loitering has on climate change.
Okay, so I'm just gonna wrap up the little BDS part of this conversation and just a
What do you
small.
think about that? By the way, do you think can you be not a hypocrite? And
I mean, that's the thing, right? And the reason that I think that is because nowadays you hear in mainstream media about boycotting China over human right violations. And I love that the people ask other people to do it, they themselves don't boycott it, which is like really funny. But I've seen it's like crazy. This is one thing that we have to get into one day, but we'll discuss that separately. But I think that forget about if it's
daring
like,
people to boycott China. They provide everything. What do you mean
yeah.
boycott?
But yeah, anyway, but um, forget about the strategic, like how effective it is or not. But I would say that if you could argue that the kind of colonial illegal settlement aspect of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory is unique in the world, any other quote unquote bad thing you see other places is different, is a different kind of bad thing, then I think you're not a hypocrite and it'll be legitimate. And to me, it seems like it is a very unique situation in that sense, based on these two things that I said, although I'm not 100% sure if someone can point out to X or Y place, which, we don't know about, and there's a similar thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there must be similar situations
Yeah.
around the world. But somebody could say, well, like if a government of if a legitimate government of a country kills a certain group of people that are not in a disputed territory, that are in a in an undisputed territory, does that make it better? No, it doesn't make it better, but
Mm.
it does make it different. So
Yeah, no,
you're
that's
right.
what I mean. I'm not saying, and I try to not say better or worse or,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, no, well, I
yeah.
agree. I just, yeah, exactly. If you do these type of things, you're doing it largely for yourself, unless you're doing it on a very larger scale.
Yeah.
On which case, kudos to you, I suppose.
So just to wrap up this little BDS part of the video, I'm just going to read two quotes from him. One is quite harsh. So it says that BDS activists, he accused them of inflating the numbers of Palestinian refugees and, quote, wanting to create terror in the hearts of every Israeli rather than resolve the conflict. He further on adds that, quote, I'm not going to tolerate what I think is silliness, childness, and a lot of left-wing posturing. So kind of with what you were saying about the real strategic significance. But
I
okay.
would say, I kind of like this is something that we talked about before as well. I think he may be too harsh on them here,
Hmm.
in my view, because I think he's mixing up the activists with the people who maybe came up with the idea or who are
Yeah.
behind the idea, because I think in within the left wing circles a lot of people do a lot of things because they are a fad, or because you're young and you want to do something at university and stuff. So I do agree with, like, when he says posturing, childishness, this definitely refers to a lot of people who support BDS, in my view, which I've met, which are just basically children who are, oh, that's a good, we want to be against the system, blah 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 bullshit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't think the people who were originally behind the idea, or maybe had a, or have organizations, they may not be like that. So I think it's kind of like, I think the problem we see with identity politics, like there is a lot of good stuff in there, like white privilege, blah blah blah. If you look at the original definition, there's a lot of
Hmm.
good in there, but a lot of idiots have basically changed the meaning of those words and made the movement lame, basically.